Grandpa leaves fat inheritance to son, but nothing to daughters. This didn't happen yet, but my whole family is fighting over this. I'll try to make this as short as possible. My father passed away in December. He owned a classic car. I believe it's a 50s Chevy Bel Air. My son, 17, is the only grandson he had. I have one sister who has 2 daughters, and I have 2 daughters along with my son. So there are 5 grandkids in total. My dad was never much of a girls' guy. He always got along with the boys more than the girls. Him and my son were very close. He has left the car to my son in his will. The rest of the grandkids got $4,000 each. The vehicle is valued at over $70,000. My sister is livid. I am very unhappy as well. It's just blatantly unfair to his 4 other grandkids. I don't understand the legality of the situation because it was left to him, but he is currently underage. The car is currently held at my mom's house. I don't know how to force him to sell it, but I think that is what should happen, and the money can be decided equally amongst the grandkids, the way it should be. My son is very upset about this. He says Grandpa left him the car, so it's his car. I have money saved for his college. I am almost considering telling him that his college money will be divided up amongst his sisters and cousins if he refuses to sell the car. Am I the a-hole? Response 1. You're asking the wrong question here. You need to ask yourself, do you intend to honor your father's last wishes about his property or not? It seems an unfair situation all around, but forcing him to sell it would certainly damage your relationship with your son. Is it worth doing that? You would be the a-hole. A good point made below by /r_comments//AITA for forcing my son to sell the car he is /KPTMG/. This could open you up to legal action. OP. Think carefully about trying this. I don't recommend it. Adding another point here. Many have posted this, but I wanted to highlight it. OP. You are so concerned with being fair to your daughters and nieces, but you don't seem at all concerned with being fair to your son. How is it fair to basically rob him of his rightful and legal inheritance? Reply 1. You need to ask yourself, do you intend to honor your father's last wishes about his property or not? Furthermore, depending on where the OP lives, there are plenty of places that allow children to own possessions and receive gifts that the parents have no claim over. So the mom trying to force the kid to sell it might be legally unenforceable. Reply 2. I wonder if it could be straight up illegal to do so. I wonder if OP could be liable financially for doing so. Reply 3. I wonder if it could be straight up illegal to do so. I wonder if OP could be liable financially for doing so. Depending on the jurisdiction, absolutely. Reply 4. Apparently, OP plans to loot the young man's college fund if she can't figure out how to force him to sell the car so she can steal the money. Reply 5. Isn't it amazing how someone's life boils down to money after their death? Families usually show their true colors. My uncle and aunt is like this. When my gran died, they saw ### signs. Screwed my mum over after taking all the really valuable stuff. My mum ain't no pushover, but she actually didn't give a F. She actually just wanted her mum. Not the house, the stuff in the house, or the cash in the bank, just her mum. It's how I was brought up. Screw the cash. If I get £1 and my brother gets 10 cows, who gaff? I know a lot of folk love their inheritance, but I simply don't get it at all. If enough cash is put on the table, the actual death of the person comes a distant second. Response 2. YTA and your sister is also get real. Your father had final wishes written down in a legal document that he paid to have drafted. He gave each grandkid something. In the case of the granddaughters, it was cash. In the case of your son, it was a car. By your own words, he has a strong, close bond with your son, and not with his granddaughters. There is no what's right or fair in someone's will. It's literally their final wishes. He could have also left all of them diddly squat and donated it to a charity. But he chose to do what he did, and now you and your sister, because you perceive it as somehow unfair, are attempting to subvert that. Have your son sell his inheritance. It's legally his property now, not yours, even if he can't drive it, to appease the other grandchildren. Please remember, your father has zero obligation to give anyone anything and choose to do things as he has. No one was left out and everyone got something. I'm sure your mother is thrilled you're all making such a ruckus over this while she's grieving her dead husband, and you're all comparing and complaining how fair it all is or isn't. If I was your son, I'd be telling you to pound sand, and I hope you realize you're risking your future relationship with him by what you're considering doing. And if he speaks to a lawyer, he's going to find out you actually can't make him sell that car. Since you seem to be stuck on what's fair, your threat of dividing his college fund due to something that was completely out of control is both cruel and unfair to your son. If you choose to do that, I hope you understand it's very possible your son will wash his hands of you and want nothing to do with you down the road. For anyone reading this exact reason is why you should have a trust instead of a will. Granddad has a will that's now attempting to be subverted by his children, who are unhappy with how Granddad chose to distribute his assets upon his death. Granddad obviously had a stronger bond with one child's son than he did with his, yet still choose to leave them something. If you speak to an estate planning lawyer, they will suggest leaving $4,000 to $5,000 to someone you're related to, but not necessarily close to, as it's a sufficient amount to be unable to petition the validity of the will. Granddad knew what he was doing. He wanted that car to go to his grandson, and now his adult children are fighting over it because it's not fair. Reply 1, YTA. If you sell the car, it's not only illegal, but also immoral. Taking your son's college fund to give to your daughters is downright dirty and shows you don't give a flying female about your son or his future. Your daughters are not entitled to shit. Quite frankly, I'm actually disappointed in you. Reply 2. I think it's fair to point out that in some jurisdictions, a will or trust can be challenged on the grounds that the person forgot about someone or that the amount is trivial. By putting in a minor amount of money, $4,000, it helps to ensure there's less grounds to challenge the will. In other words, Grandpa may have known exactly what he was doing by giving them a paltry amount instead of disinheriting entirely. Reply 3. Grandpa clearly knew his daughters were greedy people. Their first thought was to sell the car. Clearly, they just want money. Reply 4. Selling something that is pretty much irreplaceable too. Son could someday buy the same model, but it would never be the one that him and Grandpa bonded over. This is really sad to see that they want to sell something off that more than just a monetary value, even if that's all OP sees in it. Reply 5. For anyone reading this exact reason is why you should have a trust instead of a will. Can you explain in a bit more depth what the advantages of that are in this kind of situation? If you speak to an estate planning lawyer, they will suggest leaving $4,000 to $5,000 to someone you're related to, but not necessarily close to, as it's a sufficient amount to be unable to petition the validity of the will. I haven't heard of this before. Is this so that it shows that the deceased didn't make a mistake and that the person got exactly what they were supposed to get? Response 3. YTA. Even if he sells the car, you can't force him to give up the money. The car was clearly given to him as a sentimental item and a shared interest. It was given to your son because he was the only one of the family likely to appreciate and maintain it. It's like if your father had a Steinway grand piano, he'd give it to the grandchild who played piano, not the grandchild with an interest in pottery. And as long as your son doesn't sell the car, he's not actually reaping that $70,000 in inheritance. He doesn't somehow have $70,000 to spend on college or anything else. He's just got a very sentimental, valuable car. Also, while the other kids got cash, your son got an ongoing bill. That car is going to cost him money to keep registered, insured, inspected, and maintained as a drivable vehicle. Your son didn't get $70,000, he got something without a defined tangible value that will cost him hundreds of dollars every year. Reply 1. Maintenance on a 1950s car is going to be steep, and any real work will be insanely expensive and custom. You're the a-hole. Reply 2. I disagree with this. Parts supply on a 55, 56, or 57 Chevy is really good, like they are in the road over here in the UK where they were never sold in period good. I totally agree that the OPWBTA, if they forced their son to sell that car, I'd expect your son to hold a grudge too. Reply 3. This. Plus, the car isn't really worth $70,000 until someone pays that amount. If people are pissed at someone, it should be grandpa. But it's his stuff and his decision. Everyone rise should be grateful they got free money. Reply 4. Yeah, I doubt it'll be an easy sale. This is a hobby item that would take a long time to sell. A lot of collector items don't go for appraised value. Reply 5. I wonder how much money OP got. She doesn't mention it, but she sounds jealous of her son. Why wouldn't a mother be happy for her son receiving such a precious gift? Response 4. I absolutely cannot understand the unfair inheritance people. The point of a will is not a fair distribution of assets. The point of a will is so a person's assets and belongings go where they want them to. Your father made his decision, and you and your sister are assholes from trying to force equality instead of honoring your late father's wishes. You're doubly an a-hole for looking for ways to force him to sell it and threatening his college education over it. What the F is wrong with you? You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. And you and your sister are both entitled brats. Reply 1. And if it's so unfair, why aren't OP and their sister giving some of their inheritance to the other grandkids? Reply 2. It's literally his car. Just because she's his mother shouldn't give her any sort of say in the matter. Legally, he owns that car. It is 100% his. You're the a-hole massively. Response 5. You really need to think long and very, very hard about whether or not you'd like to stay in contact with your son. If you go through with this, you will be forcibly taking away the very last thing his grandpa gave him. You are undermining the decision of a dead man and blatantly disrespecting and disregarding his last wishes. That would make you an absolutely awful daughter to him before we even get to your son. As for your son, he is 17. If he is made to sell that car and divide that money, I see it very, very likely he uses this money he has left to get as far away from you as possible. Your son is just barely under the cutoff where he'd be out of your reach about the car anyway. Do you really want this to be the last thing you do to him as a minor? Is this how you want him to remember the end of his childhood? You seriously want your son to remember his mother as selfish and greedy? You're going to take away money you've saved for his future, his life, all because someone else left him something worth more than expected. Your son has a monetary limit for how much you love him. Some mother you are. I sincerely hope this puts some things in perspective for you. I sincerely hope that you can find another way to rectify this situation. If you cannot, I hope your son never has to deal with you again. I hope for all things holy, you are unable to force him and he takes the car and gets the F out of Dodge. I hope he puts enough distance between you and him for you to understand this is not, never was, and never ever will be your decision to make. You would be the a-hole. Quite frankly, you'd be a terrible, terrible mother to your son, and words can't even describe the kind of disgraceful daughter you'd be to your father. I mean, seriously, what kind of person does this? Reply 1. OP on Reddit in a year complaining that her 18-year-old son has no contact with her and she has no idea why. Reply 2. You've thought about stealing / forcing him to sell his inheritance and give it away to the girls, taking his college savings away and giving it to the girls, making your mother leave him out of the will that has the majority of their wealth, not allowing him to park it at home, your sister and daughter's jealousy and greed, etc., etc., etc. Not once did you think about him and how that would affect him, his relationships with the family, and especially you, the sentimental value of the car to him, the lifelong memories and lifestyle that car could provide him with, as well as whoever he would leave it to upon his, etc., etc., etc. All you have thought about is the girls. You are sexist and blatantly unfair. Wills are not meant to be divided equally. They are meant to be divided the way the person who made it wanted it to be. It's not your property, and you have no say in what goes to who. How dare you even entertain the idea that he doesn't deserve to receive that car? Good opportunity to show your kids how to be happy for their family when good things happen for them, instead of immediately being jealous and greedy. Your dad would have left the car to one of you, but he knew you only cared about the money and would sell it like you're trying to make him. That doesn't have anything to do with boy or girl. It's who he knew would cherish and keep the car that meant so much to him. If your daughter happened to be the one to inherit it, I doubt you would be doing the same to her. When one of them inherits your mother's wedding ring, you will force her to sell it and split the profits, right? Wow, lady, you're absolutely disgusting. Your son will always remember the day he found out he inherited something so special, and his own mother and family attacking and punishing him for it until he gave it up, all for everyone, to get an extra 10 to 15K that will be gone so quick with nothing left to show for it. Definitely nothing as special and meaningful. You can't even take that back now. The damage is done. You destroyed your relationship with your son and his relationship with his sisters and other family for money that wasn't even yours, and it's pathetic. I truly hope he finds people that love and care about him now that he found out how his entire family really feels. This is probably the worst AITA I've ever read. Wow. Reply 3. OP said that she and her sister are trying to force their mother to change her will as well. That makes her even worse of an AITA. Not only are they bullying her grieving son into giving up his inheritance, they are also bullying their grieving mother as well. Those two women are absolute monsters. Reply 4. Yes, one of her comments says maybe she will just make her mother change her will to give the girls more than him when she dies. They probably already have it set up to where they will get a lot more than him from her, mainly because they are women, which is ironic. And that's probably why Grandpa wanted to make sure he got something special from him. Twisted carp. I hate this woman. Haha, God. Reply 5. Doubt she would be thinking the same if her mom died and left all her jewelry to her granddaughters. Just really weird logic all around here. Response 6. YTA. Your son is entirely correct. It's not up to you to distribute his property and subvert his grandpa's wishes. You are supposed to act in your son's best interests. How would those be served by your plan? Reply 1. How about all the girls pay their share of the upkeep for the car, and if your son sells it, they get a share? Because if I was your son, I would agree to that and never sell the car, and I'd bet your daughters wouldn't agree, because all they're interested in is money now. Response 7. YTA. That car may mean something special to your son as a reminder of the bond he had with your dad. The situation behind it are unfortunate, but not yours or your son's fault. Your dad made that decision on his own, and it was a decision he was well with his rights to make. Making your son sell it not only is an a-hole thing to do, but making him split the money is even worse. Some perspective for you. A somewhat similar thing happened to me with regards to my mother, and something given to me by my dad. And my dad traded his truck, he loved that thing, to a neighbor for a 1991 Nissan Sentra when I was 14 in preparation of me getting really close to driving. He helped me put a new sound system in it and everything, fixed a few things up, all that stuff. Well, my mom and dad divorced. Mom got custody. Mom hated dad. She forced me to sell it for $600 to her friend from work. Fast forward a few months later, my dad came over and asked where the car was when he noticed it was gone. I told him what happened and he looked like I blew a puppy's head off or something. Look of total defeat in his eyes. I've resented my mom for that ever since. My advice to you, don't sell it. Don't do that to your son. Your son is your flesh and blood. You brought him into this world and raised him. Your sister's kids are irrelevant here. Your daughters may be upset, but it's not their call. And really, it's not yours either. I know your daughters may feel slighted as well. But really though, it is the way the cookies crumbled. Would they appreciate the car like your son, or would they sell it in favor of something they would want? Selling that car would be a mistake that you will regret for years to come. When it comes to inheritance, you have to execute a will to the wishes of the deceased. Whoever the executor of the will is, failure to do so can be considered criminal or negligence in the eyes of probate or estate court. Your family will just need to deal with it. A sticky situation regardless though, especially since you have 2 daughters. Should your dad have put in the will to sell it and split it? I don't know. Depends on how sentimental that car is for your son. But that doesn't change the fact that it was not your father's wishes. Monetary value in this case is irrelevant. Your son was left a car to appreciate and drive around. Everyone else got $4,000 to spend or save as they see fit. Your son, I assume, did not get cash. I know, as a mom, you probably feel terrible for your daughters if they are expressing ideas that their grandpa didn't love them as much. This is where it falls to you as a parent to let them know that is not the case and to try and help them understand what is going on. Also, dividing up his college fund to make up the difference is a surefire way to have your son resent or hate you, waiting for the day he no longer has to talk to you again. You are treading on thin ice here. Be very careful how you proceed. Azu/aggressive-bed 3269 said, "What the F is wrong with you?" Reply 1. Whoever the executor of the will is, failure to do so can be considered criminal or negligence in the eyes of probate or estate court. It's not necessarily criminal, but the executor would be personally on the hook to hand over the value of the car to the OP's son if the son doesn't get the car. Reply 2. Yep, you got it. I wasn't sure since some states handle things differently, so I threw that in there as an either / or kind of thing. Response 8. YTA. If you steal his inheritance, don't expect him to have any relationship with him after he turns 18 and can kick you out of his life. I have money saved for his college. I'm almost considering telling him that his college money will be divided up amongst his sisters and cousins if he refuses to sell the car. You can do that, and it will be just the same as stealing his car. If you do it, you won't be in his life anymore. This is not about money. This is his remembrance of the granddad he loved and was close with. He made the effort to spend time with Grandpa. The girls did not. So, let him keep Grandpa's last gift or lose your son. This is not about money, and he will never forgive you. Reply 1. She's basically selling her son for 70 grand. I guess everything does have a price. I wouldn't take 70 million for mine. Response 9. YTA. My son is very upset about this. He says Grandpa left him the car, so it's his car, as he should be. That car was left to him specifically. Regardless of how your other relatives feel, fairness isn't legally binding in a will. If you make him sell that car, good luck with dealing with years of resentment. Response 10. YWBTA. I've been in this situation before. When my grandmother passed, she left a very expensive diamond ring to one of my aunts, in addition to the rest of her assets divided among her 3 kids. She only gave my aunt that ring because my dad and his other sister didn't put up with her narcissistic BS. It sucks, but you move on. Look, your daughters and nieces got $4,000 cash in hand, which they can use on anything and everything right now. Your son got a $70,000 asset. From your post, your son and father were very close, so it's unlikely that he will just sell the car for the cash. Plus, he'll need to pay for the upkeep of the car, which I imagine isn't cheap. What your daughters and nieces have is much more useful. Response 11. YTA. Why the FK would someone go through the trouble of making a will and dividing their assets if it wasn't what they specifically wanted to happen? You're on the fast track to having a kid who never speaks to you again. It's not your property to give away. Sit down, tell your sister to sit the FK down. Y'all need to grow up. Life isn't fair. Suck it up, Buttercup. Response 12. Info. Did you or your sister receive anything in the will? To be clear, you're the a-hole, and what you think should happen with the car is entirely irrelevant. Your father left the car to someone he thought would love it and treasure it like he did, not sell it for whatever money it was worth. Your son has every right to keep the car as a reminder of someone who treasured a relationship with him. Response 13. YTA. Here's the reality of the court system. He can kick up a fuss and tie you and your family up in the courts over the car. A good lawyer will then push it till he hits 18. Then you truly do not have any right to do anything about it. Plus, then you have to eat those court fees too. Using a college fund against him is disgusting. It's not the kid's job to fix the adult's mistakes. Reply 1. Question: do you have college money saved for your daughters as well, or just your son? What you are planning on doing is spiteful and disgusting, using the split of his college fund against him. Reply 2. Disgusting is the exact right word. I can't believe this is a mother writing this. This is a surefire way to lose your child forever. Response 14. YWBTA. It doesn't matter how sexist you think he was being. He left the car to your son. Full stop. All of you are selfish and and I'm willing to bet Grandpa knew your greedy butts would sell it. Reply 1. I love she calls the men sexist, all while obviously being sexist herself to her son. Pot kettle black. Response 15. YTA. It is his car. You have no right to sell it without his consent, especially since it seems to mean a lot more to him than the monetary value it holds. Is the car and $16K all there is? If not, why don't you reduce the amount you and your sister get and give it to your kids? Why is it your son that is responsible for fixing this situation he didn't create nor ask for? Response 16. YTA. Let the kid keep the car. Not his fault. Grandpa liked him more than the other kids. You're punishing him for what his grandpa did. You are teaching him to hate you and the other grandkids because you are trying to force him to give away his inheritance so that the others can get more. He will leave your family behind later in life. Response 17. YTA. You may think it is unfair. I might even agree with you. But our opinions do not count in this game. It is your father's will. He wanted the car to go to your son. You have no right whatsoever to try and influence your son to sell the car and give the proceeds to his sister and his cousins. If you try, I really hope you get called out on it and stopped in your tracks. If that sort of thing were possible and legal, it would have no point to make a will. Response 8TA. It's not your son's fault that his grandfather left him more than he left his other grandchildren. Why are you punishing him for it? Response 19. YTA. It is in your father's will. If your son could get an attorney at his age, I would encourage it. This is the meanest thing in the world. Are you only mad because your sister is livid? Your dad and your son shared a very special bond, and your son is still a kid. You will ruin your relationship with your son if you force him to sell this vehicle. Your sister needs to accept this, and so do you. What an awful thing you are doing. YTA. I'm guessing you're leaving out some reasons why he willed this to your son specifically. But the one thing you're not leaving out is his grandfather probably left it to the kid because he knew the rest of your clan would sell it for the money, but the grandson would use and enjoy it.